Welcome back to my channel, guys. I hope you guys are doing good today. We're going to get into part 5 of my story about being in two narcissistically abusive relationships in a row. Like, comment, and subscribe if you like the content that I am providing you here, and share my page if you know someone who could use this help, healing, and this story. So let's get into it. I found out that I was a part of a narcissistically abusive relationship this year in February. It is now November. This is 2020. So I found out about 9 or 10 months ago. The beginning of me finding out actually started in November of 2019. So in November of 2019, one random night while I'm at work, I get the bright idea to search my boyfriend on Google. When I search him on Google, of course, I find the mugshot again, but we already knew about that. But something kept telling me to keep looking. I don't even know what I was looking for because nothing had happened to push me to go look for anything. So I think that it was just God like sending me to look, to find out something that I didn't know. So as I was looking, I found a marriage record for Narcissist 2. A marriage record that stated that he had gotten married in 2016 in July, around the same time that I hurt my ankle, around the same time that he went to the Bahamas with his mom, around the same time that he was not in North Carolina. The marriage record was from New York. And remember, I told you guys that he had gone to New York because that's where his mom stays, to catch the cruise to the Bahamas. At this point, I am shocked, livid, hurt, an array of feelings at this point. So I try to look the wife up and I find some addresses for her. So after I got off work, I tried to come home. Of course, I had called tons of times. Of course, I had left tons of voicemails at this time, but he didn't respond because he was asleep, I guess. So once I got home, I couldn't rest. I could not lay down. I couldn't go to sleep. I had to find out more. So I left my house way early in the morning. I had called my sister and left her a voicemail, or maybe I had texted her and said, yo, like, if anything happens to me, this is where I went. This is what happened. Of course, she's asleep at this time. So I went to his address of where he stayed first, where he was supposed to stay, and just to see if his car was there. Of course, his car was not there. Then I drove to the address of this alleged wife, and his car wasn't there either. So then I came back home. At this point, it's probably like 5 or 6 in the morning because I work third shift. I work really late. So it's probably like 5 or 6 in the morning. So I try to relax, try to rest. I continue to call, continue to leave voicemails. Of course, no response, no call back. So when the sun comes up, it's probably like 8 or 9 in the morning, I go back over to where he says he stayed. And I saw his aunt sitting on the porch. Now, I had never met his aunt, but I knew it was her because he had already described her to me before. So I asked her if she knew him, just to confirm that this was the aunt that I had known about. So she says, yes, yeah, I know him. How do you know him? So I told her, like, we were dating. And she was like, oh, do you like him? And I'm like, yeah, but does he have a wife? I said, is he married? And she says, well, that didn't work out. I said, well, have you ever heard about me? And she says, no, I haven't heard about you. Okay. At this point, we have been dating for almost 5 years. So for her not to have even heard about me when he has told me that he has talked about me to her, all right, now we getting into some fishy lies. We getting into some stuff. So I was like, does he live here? And she says, sometimes. Sometimes? What you mean sometimes? I thought that's where he lived. This is the only place that he lives. I said, okay, do you know where he's at? And she said, no, I don't, but I can try to call him. So I'm like, okay, I'll wait for you to call him. So I went back and sat in my car, and I'm waiting for her to call him. So at this point, I'm sitting in the car and I'm feeling like, girl, you look like somebody crazy. Like, I'm feeling inside like, this lady probably thinks you're psycho. And if these things that you have found aren't really true, what is she going to think of you? So she came back outside, and I walked back up to her, and I was like, well, did you get him to answer? And she said, no, but I left a message. I was like, okay, well, I'm just going to leave. And then she said again, something about, you're a nice looking girl or something like that. I was like, thank you. And then I left. So I went back home. So when I came back home, my sister called me in kind of a panic and was like, yo, what's going on? And I said, yo, he's married. And she was like, no, like, you have to be getting this wrong. And I said, man, I found stuff online last night. I told her, you know, how I had went to the aunt house. I told her what had happened. And I was like, yo, he's married. And I was like, yo, he can't be married. And she was like, no, you need to wait till he calls you and see. So while I'm talking to my sister, he calls. So he calls. Of course, he's heard all of my voicemails. He's read all of my text messages. And he's like, yo, what's going on? Like, what's going on? Like, you tripping? Like, what's going on? And I said, yo, are you married? Are you married? And he's like, no. Well, I was like, well, who is such and such? And he was like, yo, I don't know. And I'm like, what do you mean? I found a record and I sent it to you. Like, who is this? You need to come over and you need to explain right now. And I said, I called your aunt. And he's like, yeah, I know. Yeah, because his aunt probably called him. He probably answered that phone because he had two phones, but I only thought he had one at the time. But we're going to get to how we found out all of that too in a minute. So he comes over and I'm waiting. Like, it's taking him a long time to come over. And if he was coming over from where he was supposed to be staying, it wouldn't have taken him that long. But I wasn't thinking about that because he always takes forever to get wherever. He almost never shows up on time when he's supposed to show up on time. Like, anytime we're supposed to meet for the gym, I always got to wait for him to get there. Like, but it all makes sense now because he wasn't coming from where I thought he was coming from, which would be really close, which would be his home. So now it all makes sense, like now. But at that point, no, it didn't. I'm just like freaking out. So he finally comes over, comes in and sits down like nothing has happened, trying to hug me or whatever. And I'm like, no. Like, we need to talk and you need to explain because we're friends and this is crazy. So before we talk, at this point, I'm so scared about what's about to happen, about me about to lose the person that's like most important in my life right now. And I just don't know what to do. So I said, can we pray first? This is the first time that we've ever done this. So I'm like, can we pray first? So I say a prayer and I'm like, you know, Lord, let our friendship remain. Help us to both be honest with each other and et cetera, et cetera. Because I wanted him to feel at peace because I wanted him to tell me the truth. I wanted to do whatever it took for him to be calm, me to be calm, so that we can just get to the truth of what was going on. So after I prayed, I'm asking him, you know, what's going on? What happened? Who is this? And he's like, I don't know who she is. She's some girl. I got paid to marry the girl or whatever. I was trying to get money. So he says that somebody paid him $5,000 to marry the girl because the girl wants citizenship in our country. And I'm like, okay, why didn't you tell me this? And he says, I didn't tell you because it wasn't important. And I'm like, okay, why didn't you think it was important for me to know this? He's like, because I didn't think it was important. And I'm like, so who is this? Do you know her? And he's like, no, I don't know who she is. I said, where is she now? And he's like, I don't know where she's at. And I'm like, okay, so you marry a person so they can get citizenship. I'm like, so what did you do with the $5,000? Like, did you get the money? You know, and at this point, he starts like talking like I'm asking too many questions because I'm a person who always asks a lot of questions, but he doesn't like that part about me. So he says like, it makes it seem like he's like a drug dealer or something. Like some things are just don't ask, don't tell. So I'm like, okay, at that point, I can see that. I can see him doing something like that to get money. So I'm like, okay. So I'm like, are we good? Like, he's like, are we good? And I'm like, yeah, I'm just going to need some time. I'm going to need some time to figure out if this is what I want to do, because it's not even about whether you're necessarily married or not. It's about the fact that we're friends and you didn't tell me, and you're keeping something like this from me, and I thought we were friends. So at that point, the trust that we had was broken to me, because outside of him being married, I thought you tell me everything. And why didn't you tell me this? Especially if it happened this long ago, and it's something so stupid, so silly that you did just for money. Why wouldn't you just tell me? Like, I'd be like, yo, I will be happy for you that you got money. If I'm trying to marry you, I would think I needed to know if you got married. So then I asked, like, what happened to the marriage? Are you guys still married? And he said, no, because if you don't stay married for a certain amount of time, it don't count or something. And I'm like, okay, I guess he was talking about an expungement or something that you can get of a marriage, but he doesn't even know the terminology because he's lying. So after this, he leaves or whatever. And then I called my sister and I said, well, he said he, did this for money. And she's like, oh yeah, that sounds like something that he would do. Because like I said, he has presented himself as a calm person, a loyal person. He's created this friendship with with my family and with my sister specifically. Like, they had little jokes that they would kind of have, inside jokes or whatever that they would have. So he set himself up in a place where none of this that I found out would be believable. He had such a mask on that it wouldn't be believable. So after that, I had trouble talking to him the rest of that day for a while. I'm like, Lord, what? And at this point, this is hard for me to walk away from, because I have time and time again written in my prayer journal for the whole 5 years, if he is not for me, I ask that you take him away from me. So after about 3 years of writing this prayer and he's still here, then I'm assuming that he's for me, because God didn't take him away. So I guess he's the one. So I'm staying in this relationship when, outside of this thing that happened in November, a lot of weekends that he wasn't able to spend the time that I wanted to spend, I would cry. Most of my weekends were ruined and spent with me in my house, in tears, depressed, hardly couldn't even eat because he wasn't able to spend time with me. But it was hard for me to be completely upset with him because I thought he was working. So I felt bad for being upset about a man that's trying to work, that's trying to make it, and he has like all this responsibility with his child and his grandma, and then his family living up north, and like I'm trying to be understanding, but yet I am sacrificing things that I know are super important to me, are super necessary for me to have a successful relationship. I'm begging for these things the whole time, but because of the stronghold that this relationship has on me, even though so many things are wrong, I'm not able to walk away. The truth can be slapping you right in the face, just like it was slapping me right in the face, and I was still unable or unwilling to accept it as my life because I was so afraid of another person that I loved being ripped from me. I was so afraid. So I believe that too. And especially because we prayed and he's such a good liar. I'm like, I know he wouldn't lie after we just prayed. Like, I know he wouldn't, lie. I'm like, I know he wouldn't lie to me because I am so honest and I'm not used to liars. And if I have met a liar, I've met a liar that you can tell they're lying, because there's some proof behind the lie. There's something that kind of gives you a little inkling physically, like not like internally, like there's something that has happened on the outside, like a person coming and saying, hey, this is my husband, or something that will prove that it's a lie. And this is going to also explain why the me finding out all this other stuff that I found out this year, it had to be so intense. It had to be so much, or I probably still wouldn't have walked away. So let's stop here at November of 2019. I found out that he was married. He lied about it. I believed the lie, and we moved forward. It probably took maybe a few days for me to get on with it. And see what happens, I was about to end it, but let me say this. What happens when he lies or gets caught in something, he keeps texting and trying to make sure that I'm not going to walk away from him. He keeps saying like, oh, well, if you're going to leave, then go ahead and leave now. You know what I'm saying? Like, he wants to answer right then. He wants to know, so like a solidified answer that I'm going to stay in the relationship right then. He doesn't want to give me time to figure out what I need to figure out, because he's afraid that I'm going to leave. So he pressures me into like talking, he pressures me into committing that I'm going to stay throughout these hard times that he seems to think weren't even hard times. He used to always say like, oh, if you can't stay through this, which would be like us not spending time together, or us not going on vacations, or him not being able to meet these needs that I had shared with him, then how are we going to make it when we get married? He would always say that. He would also always say that all of the women in his life always left him. That was his thing. All of the women in his life always left him or did something to him that proved that they weren't loyal to him. Come to find out, they probably always left you because you're a narcissist, because you've done dishonest things and deceitful things and spiteful things that they have had no choice but to put you out. They've had no choice but to walk away, because it's either going to be them or you, and these women probably chose themselves. But this is also why I stayed, because remember I told you I wanted to be a ride or die girl, so I didn't want to be another woman that left him or gave up on him. So then when he said, oh, or you can leave if you want to, like he used this reverse psychology, like, you can leave if you want to. I'm not holding you back. I don't want to keep you from anything. He would say that all the time when I was trying to leave, or, and then I would feel bad and I would stay. Mental manipulation. So let's really end this part 5 of my story. Thank you guys for coming. Please like, please subscribe, please follow me on Instagram. Please feel free to ask any questions, because I am going to do a Q&A soon, and I'll see you guys in the next video. I love you guys. Bye.